Hey everyone, in this video we are going behind the scenes to understand how Azure Virtual Desktop connects when you are outside your corporate network. We'll look at real packet captures in Wireshark to show how RDP Shortpath works with stun, turn, and finally the WebSocket fallback. But before we go ahead and update the settings here and see what's happening in the Wireshark in the background, let me show you this Microsoft article. This article talks about RDP Shortpath for Azure Virtual Desktop. RDP Shortpath establishes a UDP-based transport between a local device, Windows app, and the Azure Virtual Desktop. So that would be my laptop where I have the Windows app through which I will connect to AVD. So by default, UDP would be tried. If UDP doesn't work, then TCP connection is used as a fallback connection mechanism. And we all know UDP is better than TCP in case of AVD because it gives us more speed, because UDP doesn't use those extra packets for acknowledgement, so it's much faster. RDP over short path or UDP can be used in two ways. One is managed networks, another is public networks. When I talk about managed networks, so that's a case wherein my machine through which I am connecting to AVD is connected to corporate network through VPN or maybe it's directly in the office, and the corporate network has a connection to Azure where my AVD VM resides, and they can talk to each other over their private IP. Public network is a scenario wherein I am connected to AVD, but my machine doesn't have a direct connection to the AVD VM. So my machine is on a public network. When my machine is on the public network, so there are two ways I can have a UDP connection to the AVD VM. The first one is a direct UDP connection using stun protocol. The second one is a relayed UDP connection using turn protocol. So by default, I will try stun first, then the turn protocol, and if both of them don't work, then I will connect to the AVD VM using TCP WebSocket. So this article just talks about the benefit of using RDP Shortpath, UDP. And here's the diagram. So this one is for managed network. We will go in the public network, and it talks about direct connection and relayed connection. So the direct connection is done and the relayed connection is done. So both are UDP, but in stun, there is a direct UDP connection between client and session host. To establish this, the client and session host must be able to connect to each other through a public IP address and negotiated port. So we'll see that in the trace, because over the public network, my machine is connected to Wi-Fi. It has a public IP, but it has a private IP. However, my machine does have a public IP, which is with the ISP. So whenever a request goes out from my machine to internet, it goes via that public IP. However, my client don't know my public IP as it sits behind NAT gateway, which is my home internet Wi-Fi. My ISP is internet. Stun is a protocol for self-discovery of public IP behind a NAT gateway device and the client to determine its own public-facing IP. So with Stun, my client determines its own public IP and then it makes a connection to AVD's public IP, which would be in Azure directly. So in this diagram, we'll just look at this part, the client and the AVD VM. So this RDP Shortpath over dynamic UDP ports is stun, where a direct connection is made. But for any reason, if we are not able to make a stun direct connection, then we fall back to turn. So in turn, the public IP is already known and a connection is made over UDP. So turn relay is just a proxy between my client and the AVD VM in Azure, which works over UDP port 3478, and my client makes a connection to that IP, which is already known, over 3478 and connects to the AVD VM. So there is a bit of delay because we have a relay in between, but still it's a UDP, so it's faster than TCP, and we can use turn in a case wherein we don't allow random UDP ports or random public IPs. Then we can use turn. However, turn is a bit slower than stun. If both of them fail, like I can't connect via stun or turn, then the TCP is used. So we'll see all of it. So this is the default setting on my host pool. So if I go on my host pool, go under networking, RDP Shortpath. So everything is default. So the first two are for managed network. We're not gonna change anything here because we are connected over public network. Maybe in some other video I will show you that. So the first one is done, the other one is done. So by default, it is enabled. It's on the default settings. So both are enabled. Now, when I connect to my AVD through Windows app, we'll see how stun works. So this is the Wireshark, and I have already put a filter here to show me stun and UDP port 3390, because 3390 is when my client will make a direct connection. Try to make a direct connection to the AVD VM over 3390 over its private IP. So it will obviously fail. We'll see that. So I'm doing a connect on my Windows app, and once it connects, we'll see a few packets in the background. All right, so I'm connected, and here is the Wireshark. So first of all, this 109 is my client IP, the source. In the first packet, it tries to make a connection to destination 10.0.0.5, which is the private IP of the AVD VM, over port 3390. Had my machine and AVD VM being in a managed network, it would have worked. Like I would have able to connect over the private IP. However, it does not work. I get a reply that it's not reachable. Then in the next packet, I try to make a connection to this public IP, and it's making a connection over port number 3478, which was for turn. So if I go back to the diagram, 3478 for turn. So even though the setting, the default is enabled, so it should try stun, but it's making a first connection over turn because that's a non-public IP and a non-port. And then it gets a response, and this XOR mapped address. In this reply, if we see this XOR mapped address, that's my public IP. As in RDP Shortpath, it discovers its own public IP. So this is my public IP, and if I go to internet and find what's my public IP, one nine eighteen one dot 52. So here's my public IP, same one which we just saw in the web page, 119.18.1.52. So it did the discovery and it found its public IP. And then after that, we could see that the connection has been established using stun. However, we don't see any packet after that, because after that, the packets are going over UDP. And if I stop the filtering and my connection is established, if I pause the trace, I could see that the connection is being made over a random UDP port 52383. And that is how stun works. So let's see what happens if we disable stun. Now it should try the RDP Shortpath over turn relay. So let me disconnect the session and connect again and start the trace. I'll apply the same filter again. The filter is applied. The trace has not been started, and here's my Windows app. I will start the trace. Now we have stun disabled, and let me try to connect and see what comes up. Okay, the session is connected, and now we see a lot of packets. So we see that it tries to connect over 10.0.0.5. We see that it connects over the turn IP. over TUN port 3478, which was there in stun as well. However, the difference being here, once the connection is established, it keeps the UDP connection, like the session going on over the 3478 port, and this the TUN public relay IP. Unlike in stun, we saw that some random UDP ports. However, in this one, the connection remains established on 3478. We see a lot of packets here. And we could also see that it's showing us TUN message. So with RDP Shortpath for public network disabled for stun and TUN is in default, it is falling back to TUN. The connection is going over this TUN's public relay IP and source port. So if we have any firewall restriction, we can't use TUN, can't use random UDP ports. Can't use stun, can't use random UDP ports, then we can use TUN. Okay, what happens if we have both of them disabled? So let's try that. So I've disabled both of them, stopped the trace. I will try connecting again, but before that, I think it's still disconnecting. Let me apply the filter again. Continue without saving. Okay, it's still connected. That's why I see those packets. So let me sign out. Stop the trace. Still signing out. Done. Start the trace. No packets. And try connecting now. Okay, I shouldn't see anything. Okay, I see few packets here. My session is connected. It tries to connect on the private IP 10.0.0.5/3390, doesn't work. Then it tries stun, it won't work because stun is disabled. And if I stop the trace or unfilter it, let me start it again. The connection is established. I don't see those packets, the stun and the UDP packets. The connection is established over TCP, so I won't see them. And we can also verify that on the session host. If we go to the session desktop and click on the icon here for network, we could see that it's connected over WebSocket. Let me quickly disconnect and enable stun and TUN, and then I'll show you what happens if we connect. We won't see WebSocket there, we'll see UDP. So it's on default. And now I connect to the session desktop. It would be using stun in the background, which is UDP. And if I go here, I see UDP as the transport protocol. I hope this video was useful to you. In case in your environment you have AVD set up and you want to check whether it's using stun, TUN or TCP, then you can go ahead and have a look at the Wireshark trace to find out whether it's stun or TUN. You can also look at the network icon to see if it's connecting over TCP. Ideally, stun and TUN or the RDP Shortpath over UDP is faster than TCP. In case we have an issue with the firewall whitelisting, like we can't allow random UDP ports or random public IPs, then we can use TUN. Otherwise, if we can't use both of them, then obviously it will fall back to TCP. I will try to see if I can show you how it connects to the managed network over 3390 in my other next videos or coming videos. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.